Hey guys, I'm back with another product demo. This time I'll be checking out the Joel Wanasek Bus Glue pack from Joey Sturgis Tones. This pack is a series of bus compressors specifically designed for Joel's needs and approach to getting a great punchy mix as quickly as possible. The UI is very simple and easy to use. It kind of resembles L1 in its simplicity, but there's quite a bit of interesting stuff going on in these plugins, so let's take a look. In this session I've imported some partially mixed stems from a project, a song by my band Deities that has a fair bit going on in it, and what I'll be doing here is finishing off the mix using all the Joel Wanasek Bus Glue plugins. At the start of the video you heard the completed mix with all instances of Bus Glue activated. Let's take a quick listen to what the mix sounds like without any instances of Bus Glue.
Open up and see what you truly are. Venture forth to this old world. Revelations from within the multiverse. I can feel the dream trickle away.
As you can hear, it's nowhere near as full sounding as the final mix. It just doesn't have the punch or a sense of togetherness, or glue as some would call it. Now I'm going to show you how I used the Bus Glue plugins to give the mix that full finished sound. Let's start with the drums. So this aptly named drums compressor is just being used as a parallel compressor. I have two separate instances going here. One of them's for the main heavy sections of the song and the other is for the quiet section, and I alternate between the two. My usual approach to parallel compression on drums is just to slam it super hard, bring the mix down to around halfway and then back off the compression until I feel like it's sitting where I want it. So in the heavy sections I'm pulling around 5 or 6 dB with the mix at 44%, and I have the pumping mode engaged because I found that really helps fatten things up. I'll let you hear how it sounds with and without the Bus Glue compressor. As you can hear, it really helps bring everything together and really brings out that nice fat low end. On the quiet compressor, the approach is quite different. The idea for this one is just to keep everything nice and consistent so that the shells aren't poking out too much over the cymbals, and just give everything that nice washy sound. It's not doing a whole lot though. I'm pulling around 3 dB, the mix is set to 70% to really keep those peaks at bay, and I have it set to the standard mode because it's a lot smoother. Now let's talk about the guitars. The rhythm guitars in this song have been quad-tracked, so getting that glue and togetherness here is essential. I have two different tones going with different goals in mind for each of them. The main rhythm tone is just a nice crunchy metal rhythm tone that pretty much covers all bases. It's got a nice thick low end, a healthy portion of mids and a nice crispy top end. It sounds sick on its own, but here's the problem. When you've got a busy mix going on, that big beefy low end is just going to get all muddied up with everything else, especially on palm mutes. So this is where the guitar compressor comes in. Some of you will be familiar with what I call the C4 trick, and what that essentially is a multi-band compressor that sucks some of that muddy low end out of the guitars when they're being palm muted, and the wonderfully named Chug Slayer mode of this compressor will do exactly that with one slider. The key here is to play with the crush slider until you get it to that perfect point where you only see the gain reduction being applied on palm mutes. As you can see, I've taken the mix down to 90% as I don't want the low end to be completely sucked out on these sections. But how extreme you go with this really depends on the song and the tone. So here's how the main rhythm guitars sound. There's not a huge audible difference in the guitars on their own, so I'm just going to move on, but try it for yourself and see how much it helps tighten up your low end in the final mix. The second rhythm guitar tone is quite different to the main tone. It's very thick and consistent in the low end and kind of dull in the high mids, but it still has some sizzle. The main purpose of this tone is to provide a consistent layer of thickness to complement the main tone. Because the low end is already so consistent here, and because the tone is going to be quite a lot lower in the mix, I've taken a more general approach to the compression here. I'm using the standard mode and I'm only pulling around 2 or 3 dB with the mix at 77%. The idea here is just to touch the guitars and make them that little bit more consistent than they already were. I'm not looking for a lot of dynamics with this tone. The lead, crunch, clean and acoustic layers are all more background elements, so I'm doing very similar things with all of them. Just trying to tame the peaks and keep everything nice and consistent so nothing's poking out too much. I have the standard mode engaged again, but I'm pulling around 6 dB of gain this time. The mix is set around 50% on all the tracks just to keep them from sounding too dull. Here's a before and after clip with some of these layers together so that you can get an idea of what's happening. Now this is where I think this Bus Glue pack really starts to get cool, the bass plugin. So basically this is an all-in-one processor for your bass DI, with independent controls for the high and low end. As soon as you put this plugin on your bass DI, you'll notice a huge difference straight away, because it's not just adding compression, it's also adding EQ and other processing all in one swoop. So what you do is you choose whether you want the low end of the bass to sit above or below the kick. Here I've chosen below. Then you compress your high and low end independently of one another. I've slammed the low end pretty hard, pulling around 10 dB and around 6 dB on the highs. Now here's the really cool part. These grit controls give you 3 different types of distortion that you can add to the top end of the bass, and they sound awesome. A and C have different flavours of that extreme guitar amp type distortion that's become popular on metal bass, and B is a more classic clean sound. I've gone for C here and I've got the gain just under halfway. Then finally you use the loudness controls on the top and bottom to balance how much of that top end you want in the mix. After all that, you should have something like this. Absolutely sick. I've also got an EQ running on this chain to tame some of the mids as they were a bit extreme. I've got a second bass chain running for a clean sound in the quiet section of the song. It's set up very similar, but I'm using grit B with the gain around halfway. Now on to vocals. This song has both screaming and clean vocals. The clean vocals are from our friend Dave McLaughlin from The Sun Explodes. So there's 2 different vocalists and I've got 2 different chains going on here. I'm slamming the screaming vocals pretty hard, getting around 12 dB of reduction and the mix is at 70%. I just think screaming vocals or powerful vocals of any kind generally sound great when slammed pretty hard. The tone and aggro controls are quite interesting. Tone basically adds some more sparkle and top end, and aggro just makes the vocals stand out more in the high mids and just really helps them cut. I've got the tone set to 21% and the aggro set to 46%. If I was mixing these vocals from scratch, I'd probably make a lot more use of these controls, but these are pre-mixed stems, so I'm already getting most of what I need out of the vocals to begin with. I'm mainly using this compressor just to glue all the layers together. Here's a before and after of the scream vocals.
Gradient visions, hallucinatory, mindful delusions, the euphoria is uplifting. Open up and...
With the clean vocals, I've got 2 different instances of Bus Glue for quiet and heavy sections, similar to what I did with the drums. In the quiet section, I'm actually crushing the vocals quite hard, pulling around 15 dB, but I've got the mix down to 50%. I've also added some sparkle with the tone control. I haven't touched the aggro because I'm just going for total smoothness here, and the vocals in this section are quite low in the mix. In the heavy section, I'm pulling around 10 dB with the mix around 75%. I'm also using the aggro around 25% to help make the vocals stand out, as there's also screaming vocals going on during this section. I didn't add any of the tone control because there was already a lot of high-end sparkle on the vocals before I put them in this session. Here's how the clean vocals sound before and after.
Fractals shattered all around, geometric foundations. The life that I thought I knew, it diminished in front of me. There is no...
You might notice they're a little quieter with the compressor engaged, as I was using this for some leveling. I'm just going to touch on this quickly. I've got some strings and horns going on in this section here, and I've used the keys compressor on them. I didn't faff about with this too much, and I don't really have any set approach to how I deal with these things because I don't work with this kind of stuff very frequently. But here I'm pulling around 10 dB with the mix around halfway, and I'm using this push control at 25%. This isn't just compressing, but it also seems to be adding this nice high mid presence, which really helps these orchestral parts stand out in the mix. Check it out. Finally, the mix bus compressor is pretty damn simple. I'm pulling around 4 dB, just touching it really. I want to keep the mix pretty dynamic where possible. I've got the no small time mode engaged, which adds some different stuff like saturation, harmonic enhancement, and just a bunch of stuff, and it makes everything sound sick. The transformer modes give you some slightly different flavours based on Joel's Shadow Hills mastering compressor. I just cycled through all of them and ended up picking the nickel one because I liked the little bit of top end sparkle it adds, though you can choose to just turn these off completely if you want. Aside from that, I've just got my usual mastering chain going. Just a little saturation, EQ and my limiter, nothing fancy. So now we've gone through everything, let's just take another listen to our final mix. Definitely recommend this Bus Glue pack for anyone who's aiming to streamline their mixing process. As you can hear, the difference is night and day, and all it took was a few instances of these plugins to take the mix from subpar to a finished product. So check out the links in the description to get your hands on these plugins. If you like the song, please check out my band Deities. The song was called Psychonaut, and it's from our second EP. It features our friends Dave McLaughlin from The Sun Explodes with the clean vocals, and Vinny Prestigiacomo, who sorted out the orchestral parts. I also have a few playthroughs of our songs on my channel, as well as a playlist containing a selection of our content, so please check it out if you like the music. I'll also leave a SoundCloud link so that you can listen to this alternate mix in full. Thanks for checking out the video. If you liked it, please like and subscribe. And feel free to leave a comment if you have any questions, or if you picked up this Bus Glue pack and you want to let me know how you're getting on with it. Cheers.